Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Let's give him a warm welcome, David Vann.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming, and thanks to Skylight for having me here for several books, which I really appreciate. They've been really supportive. This is the first novel I've written that's not about my family, so my family's overjoyed. They're really happy. It's the first safe book. I was just visiting my aunt and uncle in Idaho, and it's the first one they're reading because it's not about them. I think a writer is the worst thing that can happen to a family. My family has been great for me in that it has 5 suicides and a murder and beautiful landscapes, and it's been really good for writing tragedy. But for the family, it's like all their shame exposed for everyone to read, and it's all been transformed into monstrous shape. I didn't tell the truth about anything, so I'm really happy with this one. It's the first time I don't feel guilty. On all the other ones, I felt a little horrified and guilty, especially Dirt. It's a novel that I thought my mother might never speak to me again after reading. And it turns out she was generous, and she wrote me a nice note afterward. But it has the true story of her father beating her mother, and the fights over her money and favoritism, and our relationship that was strained for a while. So I haven't really spared them. And I think it was because I needed the weight. I needed the true stories so that we would feel there's some weight to the narrative, like we'd care about the characters, and so I hope that this one does feel like it has weight anyway, even though this is all made up. The main characters, there are 2 minor characters in here that are based on my good friends, Steve and Shalini, but the rest are all made up. So it's set in 1994, Seattle, public aquarium. It's 12-year-old Caitlin meets an old man in the aquarium. It's a place that I know quite a bit from growing up in Alaska and then passing through there. And in 1994, I went to their public aquarium and read the descriptions by the side of each tank. And it seemed like they weren't about the fish at all. They were really about human behavior. It seemed like they were about me. And it seemed really inspired. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind to write about fish more. And also because I'm kind of a fish head. When I was Caitlin's age, 12, I had 8 aquariums throughout the house, and I grew up in Alaska where the first salmon I caught was taller than I was and all that. So I won't tell you fish stories in that way, but I'll read a little bit from the beginning of Aquarium. It was a fish so ugly it didn't seem to be a fish at all. A rock made of cold flesh, mossy and overgrown, mottled green and white. I hadn't seen it at first, but then I pressed my face to the glass and tried to get closer. Buried in that impossible growth, the curve downward of thick lips, grimace for a mouth, small black bead of an eye. Thick tail banded with dark spots, but nothing else recognizable as fish. I've read this in a couple of readings. I think I'm going to read something new. I'm kind of curious. Why don't you someone give me a page number? Something between 1 and 265. I've never tried that. There's this chance that you'll hit a spoiler or something, but who cares? So 37. 37. All right. Excellent choice. Okay. Steve spent the night. I'm starting a little bit on 36 because it's the beginning of this section. So, Steve spent the night. I could hear their breathing and small cries from my mother as if she were hurt, but I knew to stay in my room and keep quiet. My mother had explained many times that some parts of her life were hers. I had my 3 pillows, my pillow palace, a kind of nest or cave, and I sank away there. In the morning, Steve made cinnamon toast, which was something new, butter and then sugar and cinnamon. He put one piece face up on my plate and then cut another piece on its diagonals to make 4 triangles, and with these he made a pyramid. Egyptian toast, he said, with cinnamon from the Nile. What fish are in the Nile? "The Pharaoh fish," Steve said, and raised his eyebrows. He leaned in close and whispered so my mother wouldn't hear. "They have scales of red marble, very heavy, and fins of gold. There are no fish like that. Have you been to the Nile?" "No." "Well, I used to live there, at the bottom of the river. Don't tell your mother. The Pharaoh fish gathered all along the bottom, as if they were a garden of gold. They had big lips, but never opened their mouths. They were very quiet, but they were keeping all the gold for the next Pharaoh." "How come I haven't heard about the Pharaoh fish?" "Well, you have now, and you have to keep it a secret because of the gold. 5,000 years ago, someone told, and the biggest fish had to leave the river and burrow through sand and try to hide. The great pyramids are their fins sticking up out of the sand. They were the biggest Pharaoh fish." I laughed and punched his arm the way my mother did. "No fish are that big," I said. "The largest fish is the whale shark." "Now," he said, "but not back then." I was distracted all morning at school thinking about the Pharaoh fish. I knew Steve was making them up, but I loved the idea of their golden fins and red marble scales, and I could see them all waiting at the bottom of the river, their bellies on sand. "Shalini," I said, "we have to make a Pharaoh fish." We had just begun art period, and Shalini already had strips of newspaper ready for Lakshmi Rudolph's legs. They're getting ready for a Christmas fair. It was supposed to be multicultural, and so they're making Lakshmi Rudolph. Anyway, what is a Pharaoh fish? "They have red scales and golden fins." "I've seen golden fish, but I think they're Buddhist." "Where have you seen them?" "On tiles on walls in India, I think. And you can buy plastic ones, or as balloons." "Do people pray to them?" "I guess so." "That's my religion, then. I'm Buddhist." Shalini laughed. "You can't just be a new religion." There were 2 ways to make shapes for papier-mâché, using wire or balloons, and we had some long, skinny balloons. So I blew up one of these and began wrapping it in Shalini's strips. I imagined great temples with fish altars, and I would become a priestess. I would wear red makeup with golden lips and eyebrows. "What's this, Caitlin?" Mr. Gustafson asked. He looked out of breath from running around the room, his nostrils working hard. "A golden fish. It will have red scales and golden fins." "Let's keep focused on task. We want Rudolph to have legs, right, so he can lead the sleigh? But the golden fish is for my religion. I'm Buddhist." "You're Buddhist?" "Yes, Caitlin. I am." "What will your mother have to say about that?" "She'll say I'm Buddhist. I'm a vegetarian, and I pray to the golden fish, and I may become a priestess." "Caitlin, you eat the school lunch. I know you're not Buddhist. And don't we already have enough religions? We need a few people to still be Christian." "I pray to the golden fish. This is my God." "Okay, fine. Pray to the fish. I'm going to make a papier-mâché of my butt and pray to that." Mr. Gustafson left then to try to save the sleigh. He had 4 kids working, but it looked like a fence with scraps blown against it, like something at the dump. "You're in trouble," Shalini whispered in my ear, leaning close. She was deliriously happy about it. All the little hairs stood up on my neck, and I had goosebumps. Shalini could make me shiver, as if my entire body were a bell that had just been struck. All right, another page number? Someone want to...
What's Lakshmi?
Oh, Lakshmi, it's a goddess. Yeah, a Hindu god. Yeah. Our friend Shalini is Hindu, and Lakshmi... I'm trying to remember. I wrote this. I've written another book since this.
Goddess of good fortune, and material wealth and abundance. She's manifestation.
Yeah.
She's pretty, curvy, 4 arms.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. Thanks for covering for me, man. Embarrassing moment for the author not knowing his own book. It's happened before, but I didn't have you to save me. Cool. So another page number between 1 and 235 or something, or 265.
265?
No, I'm not going to read. Oh, I can't read the last page.
Don't read it.
138.
Buddhist challenge.
138. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, it starts mid-sentence, so... Okay, wow, okay. So, Caitlin's mother, Sherry, is destroying the old man's car, who... Well, here's your spoiler, but... You don't think I should spoil?
Go ahead. It's your book.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think this page, if you pick anything after like page 70, it tells you there's one spoiler. There's one spoiler. I mean, this would be interesting. I kind of think maybe I should just do it. But so I guess if there's any objection, does anyone really not want a spoiler about who someone is like a character, who they turn out to be. Is it okay? Are you okay with it? Okay. So, anyway, Sherry, Caitlin's mother, is destroying Caitlin's grandfather's car, like the mother's father's car. Get in the car, Caitlin, my mother said. She was lit up bright in the headlights and falling snow, hair wild, like some goddess of winter. And as soon as I moved, she stalked over to his car and kicked his door. Stop, I yelled, but she kicked his door again, hard. He just sat there and watched her. I ran around the front of his car and tried to stop her, tried to grab her arm, but she pushed me down into the road, my hands and knees wet and slush, and she kept kicking with her steel-toed boot, denting in the side of his car. Dark blue form hunched and maddened. Stop, Mom, please stop. But she was beyond hearing, a thing of rage. She hopped up on his hood and jumped, the metal buckling beneath her, enormous dents. Then she climbed onto his roof and leapt into the air with her knees high, slamming down with her boots to cave it in. A fury fallen from the sky, no less elemental than that. She was not my mother. She was something else I had never seen, the rage in her more than I ever would have imagined. My grandfather's hands on the steering wheel still, looking at me where I crawled in the slush. He wasn't going to move. She would destroy for as long as she liked. He looked terribly sad, caves for eyes, wearing his rain jacket and a dark blazer beneath that, and a collared shirt, always dressed up whenever I saw him, as if he were going to church, waiting patiently for the service to begin. She was yelling now as she jumped and pounded. "You don't get to come back, you fucker." She jumped down to his trunk and slipped. The metal must have been icy. She fell hard onto his back windshield and slid and rolled overboard onto the pavement and slush. "Mom," I yelled. My grandfather rolled down his window quickly. "Sherry?" He asked, "Are you okay?" But she rose again, unhurt, one side soaked now and darker. She swung her boot high to kick in a taillight, splintering sound of plastic and glass, soft explosion of the bulb. "Nice of you to ask," she said. "Maybe about 19 years late, but thank you for thinking of me." She kicked in the other taillight. "Stop," I screamed. "I hope you love this car," she said. "I hope it means something to you, Daddy." "Sherry, I'm sorry. Save it." She walked past his open window to the front of the car and kicked at one of his headlights, but it didn't break. "Fuck," she said. "Steel-toed boots. There should be enough." I don't usually read the F-word sections. I mean, it's just because it was called out for the page numbers. I apologize. She kicked again, and still it didn't break. "Fuck this." She went to her open door, and I thought we were leaving, that it was over. But she popped the trunk, walked back to open it, lit up by his headlights, and pulled out the tire iron. "Please, Sherry," he said. "Good," she said. "You do care." I only watched her, same as my grandfather did. Some agreement that this was her right, or at least unstoppable. She swung the iron at his headlight, and it exploded, and she screamed. No words, just a primal yell. And she shattered the other headlight also, then swung with that iron against the body of his car, going down the passenger side, and smashed the passenger window. He put up a hand to shield himself from flying glass, but otherwise he didn't move. He only waited as she caved in the next window. A great crash in that twilight, and no neighbors interested, no security from the school. Only the three of us left alone in the snow as she moved on to his rear window and smashed into it from both sides. She was breathing hard, rested for a moment against his car, her arms in the tire iron on the roof. "I'm so sorry, Sherry," he said. "If I could go back in time, I would. But I can help you now. I have a little bit of money. I have a house. I can be there for Caitlin and you, both of you. You can move in if you want. Stop paying rent. I can watch Caitlin in the evenings so you have your freedom." My mother stepped back and stood there with the tire iron hanging. I thought she was going to swing at him, but she smiled. "That's what you think? That we'll form a happy family now? You trade the dying wife for the granddaughter and all is made well, just in time for Christmas?" She swung fast, and he lunged to his side just in time. The iron smashed the part of his window not rolled down. "And you think you can use my daughter against me?" "I'm sorry," he said. He was crying now, the most awful, lonely sobs. "Mom," I begged. "No, you don't get to do this." She swung at his windshield, yelling with the effort, poking holes in it. The surface jeweled in the streetlights, caving in. She yelled until the glass was destroyed, and she was hitting the dashboard and steering wheel. My grandfather lying across the bench seat, invisible to me, sound only of his voice, utterly lost. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," my mother said, breathing hard. "You're going to leave us alone or I will hurt you. You don't see Caitlin ever again. I will hurt you. And you live in your house with your money and you die alone. No one will be there and no one will care. You will rot in that house until the smell brings your neighbors, and then they stick you in a hole and no one is there and no one ever visits. And that's it. That's all you get." She bashed his side mirror until it broke off and hit the pavement. Have a nice drive home. My mother tossed her tire iron in the trunk then and slammed it shut. Caitlin, she said, get in now. I walked past, but he didn't see me, still lying across the seat. Dash lights making an aquarium of the interior of his car, pieces of safety glass hanging in bright pebbled waves, light blue, an ocean made brittle somehow and broken, shockwave of sound or something more, sudden and devastating. And what could he do but lie on the bottom and hide? So that was interesting to read something from later. I never get to read something from later. So maybe one more page number call out? Anything between 100 and 265, except as we've already tested me, 265. I read one part of one paragraph.
Of one?
Yeah, but then I was bored. I'd already read it, other readings. I couldn't do it. Yeah, it was unbearable to me. Not really.
Like at 47?
Oh yeah, 47.
Is that actually picked? Is that a good spot?
I have no idea. That was just the one that I was going to pick. But then you said.
Okay.
So I took that.
Okay. What happened, she asked. What's wrong? This is Sherry speaking to Caitlin. I tried to answer, but I was crying against her neck, these awful, out-of-control sobs. She set me down. Caitlin, you have to tell me right now. Inspector Bigby, I said. He asked if I had a parent, and he wants to see you. He's one of the customs officers. My mother looked out the window, as if he might be watching us right now. His first name is Bill, and he's mean, and they were laughing. Come with me right now, she said. We're going to the car. Walk fast. I grabbed my backpack, and we hurried through the rain, exposed for anyone to see. Big floodlights. This is at the container port in Seattle, where Sherry works, basic labor. I jumped in, and my mother, and she doesn't have someone to watch Caitlin. She just has her sit in the car where she's working. I jumped in and my mother held the door. I have to tell my foreman I'm leaving, she said. I'll be right back. Don't go, I said. I told him your name. It's okay, Caitlin. It's going to be okay. My mother jogged away then through the rain, still wearing her helmet. I was afraid she wouldn't come back. Bill would take her in his new Jeep to some prison, even though she hadn't done anything wrong, and I would never see her again, locked away somewhere. And she was gone a long time. Needles of rain on the roof of the car, bright lights in the darkness swallowing my mother. But she did return, and we drove slowly through the yard to the gate where she stopped and gave her ID. And then we were free, back on West Marginal Way Southwest, and then the bridge. When we arrived home, my mother parked in front of our apartment, turned off the engine, and slumped forward against the wheel. I'm sorry, I said. No, sweet pea, she said. Quiet now. It's not your fault. And it will never happen again. I think there's some law that says I can't leave you alone without an adult, so I won't do overtime. We should still be okay. I'll have enough for rent and food and gas, and you have your aquarium pass. I can afford the water and heat. We just won't have any extras. I'll cancel the phone and TV if I can. Will we still get ahead? My mother laughed. Sweet pea, you've been listening to me too much. It'll be okay. I won't be putting anything into retirement for me or college for you. That's what I meant by getting ahead. Maybe saving for a house, but that wasn't happening anyway. But you can still go to college. You just have to study hard, okay? I guess I could read one more. We could do one more. A page number?
I gave one already. Somebody who hasn't been.
Okay, someone new?
Would you say 100 to 265?
Any from 1 to 265.
How about 222?
222, nice. Good to have a late pick. It's the last paragraph of chapter. So should I back up?
Yeah.
I'll back up.
Where it's good.
Okay, where it's good. Oh my God, I'm going to have to back up forever to find. How am I going to find? Okay. Yeah, this is it's. This is the aftermath of an argument, so I'd have to read the argument. Yeah. God, it's confusing, like how to read that. So what I'll do is I'll go just a little earlier in the one that you picked, and do the scene so it makes sense. Because if you just do the aftermath of what's been said and you don't hear what's said, okay. We were at a chowder house, a fish restaurant, expensive, more expensive than any other restaurant I'd ever been to. My mother did that on purpose, I knew. She was burning through what would have become her own money, but still she wanted to punish him, and this was one way, to make him watch his dollars disappear. "Have you decided?" the waiter asked. I was still panicking over the menu. There was nothing inexpensive. It wasn't like other menus. The types of fish were listed at the top, and then you could pick how it would be prepared, and pick side dishes and combinations. The menu was like a math problem, and all the numbers too high. "I'll have the king crab," my mother said, "and the moonfish." "The moonfish is amazing," the waiter said. "An excellent choice. It's very rare that we have it on the menu, flown in fresh from Hawaii. And it should be only lightly seared, very lightly. It has such a delicate buttery flavor, and that's gone if you sear it a moment longer." "How much does that cost?" Steve asked. "It's $65 for the moonfish, and really the best choice we have on the menu tonight. Sherry," Steve said. "He'll have the moonfish also," my mother said, pointing to Steve. "My father is treating tonight." "Excellent," the waiter said. "I'll have the moonfish also," my grandfather said. "Did you know he's a war hero?" my mother asked, raising her voice so that others would hear, pointing to my grandfather. "World War II. He watched his buddies die." "I'm sorry, sir," the waiter said quietly, "and thank you for your service." "He also abandoned his dying wife." My mother still speaking in this loud voice, people looking at us. "I was 14 and got to take care of her and watch her die. Maybe not so heroic, that part. But I think we have to forgive our heroes anything, because they watched their buddies die. What do you think?" The waiter wore a small smile that was a wince. He said nothing, and for what seemed like a long time, our small side room of the restaurant and its half-dozen tables were silent. "I'm sorry," my grandfather said. "I deserve all that." Then it was quiet again. I thought Steve would say something, defend my grandfather, but he didn't. If he had, I think he would have lost my mother right then. My grandfather handed his menu to the waiter, then Steve did the same, and my mother, and the tables around us began talking quietly again. "And for you?" the waiter asked me. His voice was barely more than a whisper, and I felt sorry for him. "I can't eat fish," I said. "I love them too much." "Oh," he said, and then my grandfather said, "I'm so sorry, Caitlin, I forgot. Do you have anything on the menu that's not fish?" "We do have a burger, and also a simple pasta marinara." "Pasta, please," I said, and my grandfather said, "Me too," instead of the fish. My mother folded her arms and looked down at her napkin. "I'm sorry," she said when the waiter had left. "That was too much. I came here to punish you, and apparently to punish Caitlin also, without even realizing it. But that's not me. I don't want to be mean like that." Steve put his arm around her, and she leaned onto his shoulder. She was starting to cry, but careful not to make any sound. I was afraid to move, afraid to say anything, and I think my grandfather was too. So we just sat there and waited until she wiped at her eyes and sat up straight again. "What do you think you'll study?" my grandfather asked, maybe just to break the silence. But it was good that he was the one to speak. "Oh," my mother said, "I have to do my GED first. I can probably take a course to study for that." And they go on having a discussion, but maybe that's enough for that. So I love to have questions. That's actually my favorite part. But I have to say, I really enjoyed being able to just read randomly. It's so nice not to read the same sections I read before. I realize it probably seems a little random, but it was. That's why it seemed that way. So any questions? Yeah?
Did you remember all the stuff about the fish from when you were young, or did you have to read and investigate?
There's this great website called fishbase.org that has I think tens of thousands of species on it, maybe more, and photos of all of them. And I was looking through the photos, and I'd find one that was interesting that I wanted to look at for a while. And in the book, fish are the landscape, and also Seattle as if it's underwater, like Caitlin sees as if it's a starfish on the ocean bottom with the deep sea anglers, the lights of the planes overhead and all that. And when they go to a movie theater, it's like it's a cave with the balconies overhead and all that. In the past, I've always done natural landscapes in Alaska for my first two books, and then Northern California after that. And the way writing works for me is I have no outline or plan. I have no idea what the book will be about, no idea what the themes will be, and they're not premeditated in any way. I usually start writing one novel, work on it for 3 days, and then stop, and the next day I start my novel. And then it's just every day for 6 months, writing a page a day, and then at the end, there it is. And it's published the same as the first draft, except just line edits. There's no scene that's cut or added or moved or anything. So it's a very strange process, and the only way it works is that there's so so much more pattern to our subconscious or unconscious minds than there is to our conscious minds. So it's like a Rorschach test, like an ink blot drawing, where you can't just see ink on paper. You start to see shapes and meaning and pattern, because essentially our minds are pattern makers. Like, we can't let the natural world remain neutral. We can never do that. So as I describe Alaska, it would, the forest or the water, it would change shape or become crazy or indicate the inside life of the characters in some way. So in Caribou Island, for instance, Irene is running through the forest and she feels like the whole island is tilting beneath her, and it's going to roll over because it's top heavy with the stones and trees, and the slick underside will be exposed to the sky. And those are like moments where the landscape does something strange, which shows the mindset of the character viewing them. It really comes from the idea of referential mania in Nabokov's short story Signs and Symbols. It's a metafictional story, and in it, the boy has a mental illness called referential mania, in which he believes that everything refers to him. So when the clouds move overhead, they're speaking to him or about him, saying something about him. Other people are a reference to his existence. They exist only as part of his life. And Nabokov was saying that that's who protagonists are in fiction. Everything does relate to them. Any description of landscape in a book does tell you theme and does give you an indication of the inside life of the main character, of their vision and how that vision is shifting. The existence of the other characters, the antagonist often is a kind of foil to the main character. So I actually got to live this experience. It's really fun to be a protagonist. I was New Age in high school, like total believer. And I taught relaxation and meditation workshops. I did fire walking, where you put your arms out and use your fear as a counselor to walk across the hot coals, and I was tending the fire. And I tried to walk on water over and over. I mean, really thinking it might work. I crashed into various mountain lakes and hot tubs throughout Northern California. My friends and I also, unfortunately, the New Age movement has quantum physics mixed in without any actual knowledge of math or science, and not understanding scale and speed. And so we thought we could walk through walls, and we tried like many, many times, and it was considered poor form to put your arms up. Really had to just walk into it and have faith. So I really was a believer, and I felt that the whole world was about me and related to me. That when I was out, hiking in the Sierras, that the mountains were speaking about me, and I did believe that other people were just teaching me a lesson in my life toward transcendence. And so I became a little selfish monster. No one else was actually real. They were just a part of my life. So anyway, that's the method of the books, is that as I describe this natural space, I end up inevitably describing the inside life of the characters, and I find out what the story will be. I just start with a place and a character with a problem, and then I find out each day and get surprised. Like, this gets pretty extreme. Like some of the sections I read, Sherry's rage at her father, I just had no idea that she had that in her, that it would be so extreme. And I didn't know the whole book would be about forgiveness. But what's wonderful about the unconscious way of writing is that it unlocks all these things that you wanted to write about but couldn't in your previous plans. So, for instance, I've had a really bad relationship with my mother for like 15 years, and neither one of us could forgive each other for various things. But this book helped me actually have a good relationship with her again, because it ended up being all about forgiveness and a family coming back together. That forgiveness isn't being able to undo the past or make things not have happened or even explain them, but just a willingness to stop and missing each other and wanting to continue on in something better. And it's just as simple as that. And so the book taught me that, and as a result, I get along with my mother now. And so the book did something. So I hope that it's not just my personal therapy. I hope it also provides something to readers. But this one was strange for me because it was a city. It was my first urban landscape. But I realized I can't really write with an urban landscape. So Caitlin sees it as if it's underwater, Seattle. And there are all these descriptions of fish. So when Caitlin and the grandfather talk about the fish, they're talking about themselves. That was kind of a long answer. That was ridiculous. That guy won't shut up.
You said all your previous books were based in real family history. It's made up. How much did you find you use this unconscious process? How much did you find that you were, the building blocks of this, though it was fiction, were still real things? Like you said, you were into fish.
Yeah.
Is there still a lot of like your mom transmogrified into this character, or an event from your past?
Yeah, it was really just the love of fish and thinking of them as a way to describe human behavior, because they're also specialized and weird. And then this idea of forgiveness. And then I have the two friends, Shalini and Steve, are straight-up descriptions of real friends that I have, the minor characters. But the main characters are really like no one in my family. And these were the first generous men that I wrote, the first good men. I've been really critical of men in all my other books. The men are all awful, like me and the men in my family. It was a description of our badness. And finally, maybe that's over, because these are both generous, nice men who are likable and try to make things work out and don't hurt anybody or do anything bad. So I was really surprised by that. So it really isn't like my family, and it really isn't like my life. And also, there's this relationship with Shalini Caitlin has, which is the beginning of a romantic relationship at age 12. And I never imagined writing about two 12-year-old girls having a romantic relationship. I mean, my publisher would have asked me not to go there. Actually, it had been premeditated. But it ended up being, I thought it was so beautiful. I loved what they were for each other. And I loved the grandfather's recognition of it at some point. So, yeah, it took me to strange, different places that I hadn't imagined that really weren't about my family, but maybe were about things I can't see, like, some softening in other ways about how I'm viewing people.
And what made you want to leave the more autobiographical stuff to do something new?
Well, I just finished. Goat Mountain is my best book, and it's the one that finishes off all my family history. And I think it's best because it's an inferno. It's a description of hell. And I think that's the natural goal of tragedy. And across all the other books, what I was writing was Greek tragedy. In Goat Mountain, there's just 2.5 characters in one place on a mountainside for 2.5 days. It's did I say 4 characters? Did I say 2.5? I said 2.5 twice. So yeah, 2.5 minutes. But anyway, it's 4 characters. Sorry. For 2.5 days in one place on a mountainside. So it's close to dramatic unities, and especially in that the action is all one dramatic action that you don't get a break from. My novels, except for Caribou Island, they're all novellas, actually, where you never get to pull away from the main drama to anything else. So they try to keep you immersed and locked in and not give you any escape. It's just that they're novel length. But they have a very small cast of characters. They exclude most of the world, as in a Greek play. And they don't give you a break from the main action. Also, there's a taboo that's crossed, something terrible that shouldn't happen, that happens usually, that breaks the rules. And then that calls into question what the rules are, like what holds us together as families or larger groups. And there's a primary relationship at the core, family relationship. So in Goat Mountain, it's a 11-year-old boy and his grandfather. In Dirt, a young man and his mother. In Caribou Island, a marriage. In Legend of the Suicide, a boy and his father. So they're all primary relations here, a good girl and her mother. And all the characters are acting unconsciously and out of control. That's the most important part about Greek tragedy. And that as they do that, they end up hurting each other. So Greek tragedy, I think, is mostly about why do we hurt the people we love most. That's the central mystery for it. And that's what's fueled all of my writing. All of my writing has been about these close people who love each other. They really have only each other in the world. Why do they do these terrible things to each other? Why do they hurt each other? In this kind of blind, out of control way. So the natural end, if you think about that, that's what tragedy does. Putting characters under pressure until they break, thinking about our badness and how we're out of control and how we hurt each other, then the natural goal or end of tragedy is to write an inferno, a hell. It's an external landscape to represent our felt badness inside. And so Goat Mountain is my hell. It's a hunting trip gone wrong, the ranch that we went to every fall when I was a child, the place that held our family history, all of our stories and everything. And the grandfather becomes a kind of terrible Old Testament God. He's the opposite of the grandfather here. They're really, those two books speak to each other. In Goat Mountain, it's an 11-year-old boy who kills a poacher right in the first chapter and doesn't feel anything. And it's after I'd written a nonfiction book about a school shooting and really caught up in that question of how is it that someone could kill 6 people and wound 18 and just feel nothing. Like the teacher said when he was shot with a pistol, it was like Steve was painting a wall in the room and had missed a spot and was just covering it. It was just like no emotional affect. So And I had this hunting background and growing up with guns, and after my dad's suicide, I aimed at the neighbors with a .300 Magnum and shot out the street lights. And my dad had always let me aim at poachers with that rifle, with a shell in the chamber and the safety off. If I just tapped the trigger, the guy would be dead. And it's like my dad was willing me to do that. So it was just an outgrowth of the thing that was rehearsed over and over in the novel finally happens in the way it did in real life. And so this is the opposite book. This is a 12-year-old who is caring and generous and wants a family to come back together instead of someone who kills and feels nothing. And instead of a terrible Old Testament God for a grandfather, it's a generous grandfather who wants things to work out. So all the books speak to each other in that way. It's really interesting. And although this isn't tragedy, it's the first one that's not, it's still Greek drama where the characters act out of control and they go pretty extreme in what they do. So, yeah.
So how does the Greek chorus function?
Yeah,
You're like a character.
Yeah.
I never understood. I always was on their side, but
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They always seem like kind of reasonable. Yeah. So in Goat Mountain, I actually have a Greek chorus. I have just 4 characters. There's the 11-year-old boy, and his grandfather is the antagonist. I thought it would be the father, but it's the grandfather he's fighting against. And then the father is really a moral man. That's his role in the chorus. And then Tom, the friend, is an everyman. So the everyman is outraged at the stuff that's happening, but not doing anything about it. The father keeps trying to assert morality against all the facts to the contrary. Despite what the boy is capable of and what the grandfather is saying and challenging, he still tries to assert that. There's a great short story you can read. It's very brief and it's wonderful. And it shows you exactly how the chorus in Greek tragedy works. It's Zora Neale Hurston Spunk, and it's got Elijah and Walter. And one of them is conscience, and the other is like a rumor, inciting things. And you can see that they're basically the two pressures on a character. That's one thing that the chorus does to represent. They show the kind of choice, the terrible choice that the character is forced into in Greek tragedy, where whichever way they go, they're going to be ripped in half, lose one or the other. The chorus represents those halves that are ripping the main character apart. So mine doesn't work exactly like that, but it's similar. I didn't realize till after I wrote the book that they were functioning like that. I didn't know why the Holy Trinity was showing up in my book either, like the grandfather like God, the poacher like a Jesus figure, a buck like the Holy Ghost. I didn't understand the book till the last 50 pages. I mean, that's how unconscious it is. Like, I really had no idea why the religious bits were in there and didn't understand what the book was about. And then when I finished it, I could see that all the books were about religion. That there's a rewrite of Genesis at the opening of Legend of a Suicide in the novella. Then there's Doom and the Anglo-Saxons in Caribou Island, the New Age movement in Dirt, the Holy Trinity in Goat Mountain, and then I've written another novel about Medea, which has Greek and Egyptian gods. So this is the first one, actually, that doesn't have a big focus on religion. It's still got the pharaoh fish and the Buddhist fish, and they're doing making these ridiculous papier-mâché things around religion. So I hadn't thought about it until talking right now that actually there is religion, but it's talked about in this lighter way. Oh, and actually it's really important for the grandfather. At the end, the whole reason he leaves and the kind of deal he feels he made with God, like, it actually isn't. Sorry, I forgot.
So you really understand narrative deeply. So I have this question to ask you. Where is the forefront of narrative? Where is the last frontier? Where is narrative going?
I wouldn't know. Well, the thing is, I'm a neoclassical writer. I'm basically doing what we've done for 2,500 years, so I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's exactly the same, that we're living the same way, and that our narratives haven't really changed, and that people who write from ideas are missing the boat. Like, I really think that an idea is the worst thing that can happen to a writer, and that trying to be innovative and trying to do something new just makes your work suck. Like, that's the only thing it can do, I think. And so, obviously, that's a very limited and conservative kind of view in terms of, narrative. It's not like my politics are conservative, but in terms of, writing. And I do actually teach experimental writing. I teach that, and I always encourage my students, try generative devices where you can't use the letter E, or you have to have the verb in the second half, or you have to use nouns, adjectives, and verbs outside their usual part of speech. So you can't have a flag, but you could feel flagged or flag a train. I think those are useful because I think literary fiction does have conventions, and we can be used by those, and generative devices can knock us out of those kinds of ruts. So I think that's useful. But in the end, I think we are actually still writing drama, and like someone who's really great and interesting stylistically, who everyone likes, like George Saunders. The big limit for him is that he writes only about morons. The people might as well be dogs. Like, really, he writes only about morons. Like, think about 10th of December. They're all morons. That's a huge limitation to the fiction. So although it's really cool sentences, really interesting stylistically, he's not writing about people. And that's going to limit his work. Like, over time, right now he's huge. Eventually he won't be because of that. Like, that's going to hurt him. Like, I believe.
You're amazing.
No.
You're totally so much from you. So there are all these great writers coming out of Seattle in best-selling fiction, and really literary people like
Charles D'Ambrosio? Yeah, I met him. I really liked his story, The Point. It's one of my favorite suicide stories. That one's incredible.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, I have like a little collection of suicide stories because my dad's suicide. Like, we read according to our interests. So of course I was drawn to all of those. And I also really like girl coming of age stories for some reason. Like, I really love Ellen Foster by Kay Gibbons and Bastard Out of Carolina. Like, I love those books. And actually I just bought Girl's a Half-Formed Thing, which I hear is great stylistically and stuff. I don't know if it's girl coming of age or not. Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson is another one I really love. So, yeah, who knows why I have that interest? Because, what troubles did I really have growing up as a girl? but anyway.
What is it about Seattle? Everybody's coming out of Seattle. Garth Stein, everybody's coming out of Seattle.
Well, some of them, Charles D'Ambrosio, he was at the Iowa writing program, and he was from a long time ago, and he would say that he hasn't come out at all. He's had to wait forever. It's been long and frustrating. I'm like, when's he really going to get recognized?
Best writer I've ever read.
Yeah, he's really, really good. And it was so crazy. He wasn't recognized for so long. Couldn't get a book published. And
He's sort of just like, he's like totally insular, right? He's
I don't know. I don't really know him personally. I've talked to him a few times and met him, and I love his work. But yeah, I don't know. Anyone else? Another question? Yeah?
So, I didn't quite catch your new age of your own volition, that you had learned about these other religions.
Yeah, in high school, I really needed religion. I'm an atheist now who actually believes that we really need religion, and if we can't have religion, if we can't believe, we have to find a substitute because we need it so desperately, something like it. So for me, it's my daily writing practice. It really is 2 hours every morning, except if I have to take a flight for a book tour, but otherwise it's 2 hours every morning, and the first hour is reading through the previous 20 or 30 pages, like a meditation. My mind's going different ways, and it comes back, and then the next hour is like contact with mystery. I don't know what's going to happen, and things do happen. The next paragraph is there. I think I'll never write another page again, but the page does happen. So to me, that's religion. That satisfies me. It's a thing I can do in which no part of me is left out. It fully uses me. Most jobs you do, they leave some part of you standing outside, and I think we need something that's engaging. I think happiness is not lying on the beach, but it's engagement. That's the whole thing. That we're somehow fully used and burned away by something. We need something like that. I don't know, but me, the person I care about most certainly needs that quite a lot, and the people that are close to me that I know well, they seem to need it also. But anyway, I started in high school. I went to all kinds of different religions, trying to find one that I could believe. And New Age, I believed for a long time, and really was a true believer. But then got deprogrammed in college. Basically, I took a religious studies class and a history of science class, and they really knocked me out of my faith. So I blame universities, and actually my family blames universities. Recently, I was telling them about why I got separated from my wife, and they said that the writing was very bad for my head. It had done very bad things for my head. They could tell from talking with me, and that being in universities so much had also done very bad things. So I have to warn you against books writing in universities.
I'm really fascinated with this idea that you sit down and write it beginning to end and never check out a scene on your mind. Has that always been your process, or how long did it take you till that process began to be tight? Your story, your structure had that conciseness. You talk about this Inferno, tight well-packed story. To do that in one fell swoop, the 6-month swoop, how long did it take you to get your process and your knowledge of structure and story to the point that you could achieve that?
Well, I failed for a long, long time. So the first book, Legend of Suicide, I worked on for 10 years, from when I was 19 until 29 years old. And everything that's in the book, I wrote incredibly quickly. Like the first story I wrote at 3 a.m. for a couple hours and then woke up and finished the last scene and only moved one paragraph. But I didn't learn from that experience. I still thought writing was mostly revision. I thought that was just a freak, that one story. And so I wasted most of the 10 years on my serious work, all which had many versions, lots of revision, and all of which had to be thrown away. It's all Frankenstein with stitches. And then I wrote the novella, which is most of the book, in half of it in 17 days, sailing from San Diego to Hawaii, having never more than 45 minutes of sleep, having paranoid dreams that islands were rising up that weren't on the chart, reading Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian. I mean, it was this awful, kind of strange and wonderful dream, that experience. And I wrote, half of a novella in the 17 days that I was doing that. So everything that I kept in the book ended up being almost completely unrevised and very quickly written, but over a 10-year period of lots of failure. And then I wrote 50 pages of Caribou Island and totally couldn't see how to do a longer arc, just couldn't do it. And then 12 years later, finally wrote that book. My Goat Mountain is based on the first short story I ever wrote more than 25 years ago. Dirt on the second short story I wrote. So they were stories that were failures early on, material that I knew was important but didn't know how to approach. And my brain had to get older, and I had to have more experience and time to be able to finally write them. And now I've written 7 books in the last 7 years, and it's been just picking low-hanging fruit. Like, it's all been very easy to do all of it, and really fun. It hasn't been painful at all. I've loved the whole process. Like, I've enjoyed it.
Station from older stories and films.
Yeah. And the other half, I think, is a language study. I actually am translating every day from Old English and Latin, which are the 2 source languages for now. So in linguistic terms, the way that we can write without thinking about each sentence as we're doing it is that we have competence and performance. Competence is all of our study of the language, so what we've heard, what we can read, but really increased by looking at, like I would watch movies and pause at each scene and write down one line for what happened in the scene. So at the end I'd have 3 pages that outlines the film, so I can see what dramatic structures they were using, like doing that with dozens of films, and then doing it with books also, and with my own books and stories. After I write a novel, I go back and I make like a 5 or 6 page outline that just has a little one line about each scene, kind of what happened, that gives you a sense of pacing and structure, how much time did I spend. And I also add up how many pages did this character get and that, to get an idea of balance and how the whole thing goes. It leads to no revision in the end, but in the end I feel like at least I understand the book and I understand how it went together. So it's that kind of study, and in university classes, studying style, and then study of language that's related language. All of that raises your competence, what you can understand in an English sentence. In studying Latin, you get to see all the buried grammar. So I go to the store to buy some milk is really, I go to the store in order that I might buy some milk. It's an uk clause with a subjunctive. So it's buried grammar. Much of grammar now is elided. It's been taken out. So it's really helpful to know that. And then to know the sound and rhythm of Old English. To use paired heavy stresses, which you see in many novels, like in Marilyn Robinson's Housekeeping, our hovering faces and our cold hands, or at the beginning of Annie Proulx's The Shipping News, gut-roaring, hive-spangled, gut-roaring, with gas and cramp, he survived childhood. It's the second paragraph. It's all paired stresses except 1 triple stress. And then it ends with, he liked a ham knuckle, buttered spuds. She's using the lexicon from Old English, like mostly Anglo-Saxon words, the Germanic or Scandinavian side, but she's also using that those paired stresses at points of emphasis. So when you're writing, if you know all of that, if you've read it a bunch and immersed in it, when you come to the last paragraph in a section, a place of tremendous emphasis, you'll end up providing greater metrical cohesion, you'll end up going into those paired stresses or into something from Latin like iambic pentameter or something. You'll end up providing that because that's a cue to the reader that this is important, they should pay attention. There's all these cues that readers aren't aware of that they're actually responding to. And it's mostly about levels of cohesion in a text, which you can understand by just getting a linguistics textbook. There's one I recommend called Linguistics for Students of Literature. It's out of print, but you can find them sometimes various places online and such. So that's your competence, all of that. But then your performance is far away from your competence. It's only a subset of it. But if you do the practice every day, if you actually write every day, you can get that performance closer and closer to fully what your competence is. So when you end up writing, you don't think about it and typing the speed of what you can think, but you end up writing a complex sentence that reflects in some way studying the style in Blood Meridian or studying Beowulf or studying Annie Proulx. So to my understanding, that's how it all works. And that's why I'm doing that every day with those two languages, because I think that's the only way I can get better. Do you want to hear a little bit of Beowulf? It's very pretty. So, Hwat, Wegardena, and Yer Dagum, Thead Köninge, Thrymje Frunen, Hutha Eitlingas, Ellen Fremedon, Ofschild Sheffin, Sheadana Threatum, Monogum Medum, Meodesetle of Teach, Egsede Erla, Sithan Eres with Schwärschaft funden, Hethas Frofre Jabad, Werks under Wolknum, Werthmundum Tha, Othat Elwich there, Sittendra of a Hronrade, Huren Scholden, Golban Gulden, that was God König. So it's pretty, isn't it? And that's our old Germanic, Scandinavian language base. And then the French invaded, so we got Latin through French. And so you can hear it combined in Chaucer. Juan de Rapro with the Shure Sota, the Drucht of March hath passed to the Rota, and bathered every veen, and switched the cour, of which vertu engendered is the fleur. So you hear Drucht of March, so that's the German sound. The GH is still sounded, hasn't gone silent yet. But you hear engendered from French, you have the long vowels, the fleur. So that's the most beautiful our language ever was 600 years ago. Beowulf was 1,200 years ago, and then Chaucer 600 years ago. You can really hear both. They haven't gone silent. Language over time, they all get simpler and uglier. They lose their complication through use. We simplify them. So it's only when someone invades that things improve. So we really have to thank the French for invading England. It was the nicest thing they ever did for the language and the literature. It's why it's so great to write in the language now. So we really need to invite other invasion. Like Chinese would be cool because it's a different language base, but I'm not sure if it works. French and German were both Indo-European language base, and it could be you have to be invaded from within the base that's just split for a while. I'm not sure.
Do you think texting will affect it?
Yeah, I actually wrote a piece that no one seems to want to publish. It's called Schwadicon, and it's about where our language is going. And in English, we're going to one vowel, the schwa, the sound. All of our vowels, you can see examples now of every vowel switching to that sound. So eventually we will just have I mean, it's going to be so incredible. American English is already one of the most ugly languages in terms of sound in the world, but it's going to get far, far uglier. But that's part of why it's taking over, and that's why it's what everyone speaks in the world. It's kind of simple and ugly and useful. And so anyway, but it's called Schwadicon because it's also going to include emoticons. So
talking about the engineering, this wonderful question this guy asked, the beats of where you were, just as an exercise, writing out the beats of action, you do that after?
Yeah, I do an outline after I've written the book so I can understand it. Flannery O'Connor said you write something, then you try to understand it afterwards, and for me that's totally true. Like, I write it, and then afterwards I spend a couple of years trying to figure it out, and it's always when I go to France and have interviews with really smart journalists there that I finally understand something. Like, it's always the French journalists, they're the best. I mean, France has the most intact literary culture, an independent bookseller in every neighborhood, huge communities of readers, 50 reviews for a book, primetime TV, prizes, festivals, it's incredible. So, yeah. I realize for time, we're pretty much, I don't know if that, I may have to answer things forever. I mean, I have nothing to do, but.
It's interesting because you're talking, like you were saying, that writing is revision. That's feed into its drone, into its mantra of workshop.
Yeah, I was told it was 95% revision.
Yeah, and I'm just fascinated with this intuitive process because there is that sort of kind of like a Ron Carlson or let's say, right from the unconscious.
Yeah, I hung out with him a bunch in France, actually. We have the same French publisher. Yeah, it's great.
He was my principal teacher.
But I think it's fascinating the work that you're doing. What I thought was interesting about your response, the work that you're doing to create deep structure underlying that intuitive process. It's
Right.
not just an unguided process.
You know, it has to be discipline, like all the stuff to feed it, and then a daily practice to activate it.
Your facility of language is increased to a point that you can then trust
Right.
the conscious.
Yeah, that you'll go the right way in terms of dramatic structure, a way that can work. That a novel will open up and then close down at the end. Like, you know, like in Caribou Island, it's 7 points of view, 4 couples all reflecting on marriage, which is a big surprise to me. I thought it was going to be 1 point of view. But all those characters open up all their stories, and then they start falling away. So it can funnel down to the main dramatic action at the end. And I was just so shocked by that could happen without a plan or an outline or thinking about pacing or page numbers or where that would have to happen. It just happens, like from some feeling of having read a bunch of novels of kind of where that should happen. So, yeah.
And that one, I mean, I take a lot of authors that say that, and then the characters just took over.
Yeah, I've never understood that comment. It's not like the characters ever start writing or doing themselves. It's really just that what's going to happen is seeing what's said. It's not premeditated, but it follows all the momentum of what's gone before, and it's some reflection of, you know, the author's unconscious or subconscious mind, the kind of pattern that they're making. But the idea that somehow the characters themselves, as external entities, take over and do stuff is just ludicrous. Like, I've never heard a writer actually say something that makes me believe that can happen. It's just something that people say. Like, I've never understood it. It goes to me just in the unexplained garbage bin.
Is that they're trying to get equal bliss, and they're trying to get that equal bliss.
I think it's just easy to say. It's easy to say that. Like, it's a lazy way of it's not trying to explain what the process actually is.
So maybe it's coming from a different perspective that we haven't yet really what that means. So say it's garbage when it just because we don't understand that perspective.
Yeah. Well, I always tell my students, like, they're getting just one limited point of view from me. And the great thing about writing programs is every teacher ends up saying different things, and we all contradict each other. Like, there's this teacher in England, Sarah Moss, and she told everyone, you have to be so respectful in nonfiction of your family. You have to take care of them, think about the consequences. She changed one of her memoirs because she didn't want her daughters to be affected. And I tell everyone, you have to take your family up to the altar and swing the axe. You know, so my students were coming from one workshop into another, hearing completely different things. But I've never heard like a great actual description of how that is that characters take over. I just haven't heard something I believe. So that's all I should say, is that I've never believed it. I've never understood it, really.
I've always thought it was like sort of like an anthropomorphizing of the insight process. Like as you're writing, you're having insights and discoveries. It's easy to just sort of like
say that the characters did it. Right.
I like the authors who say I take dictation. I think that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, channeling. I was going to try to become a mystic instead of going to college. I was studying with the mystic Betty Bethards, who would smoke a lot and drink Pepsi and was totally a mystic and was leading us all toward transcendence. And I almost didn't go to college. I was also using visualization to make the bowling pins go down, and I was scoring like 220, 230, and I thought about becoming a professional bowler instead of going to college. I'm so happy I went to college.
Between all that New Age exploration and the fact that you work this deeply intuitive process that you...
Yeah, I had said, I wrote Dirt making fun of the New Age movement and myself and my family and stuff. And then and I was in France saying that I'd left all that far behind. And it was a French journalist that pointed out that I was still writing according to a Buddhist method. That my writing was Buddhist, that I hadn't left at all. I was like, oh, you're right. Bummer. Scratch everything I just said at like 100 events. So and I'm worried. It's okay like that. And the time maybe we should. Yeah, because I know.
When you read the stuff from in the first hour, do you go, oh, that sentence is clunky, or do you just like literally never change it?
I really never change it. I spent a couple months doing line edits, and out of a 60,000 word book, the most I'll cut is 1,000 words, which are mostly just grammatical morphemes, like the verb to be, and too many withs and such.
Do you like your editor?
Yeah, I have a new editor, and they did a beautiful job producing this book with color photos of the fish. Yeah, it was in my manuscript. I didn't know if they'd do it or not, but it was amazing they did it. And, it's 4-color printing all throughout, so it's got blue on here. It's really quality paper, nice boards and cover. I mean, I've never had a book that was actually a nice physical object. I mean, they did a beautiful job. And I love my editor. It's Grove Atlantic. Yeah, and it's Elizabeth Schmitz. She's the one who did Cold Mountain, Charles Frazier. And, she's fantastic. So, and she and my agents made, I think, some small suggestions. I may have cut a few sentences or something. I can't remember now. I've written another book since, so I'm having trouble remembering. And I'm in editorial process for another book now, so I'm thinking of it. But yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate all the support. Thanks.
Oh, let's give a big round of applause.
Well,
That was great.
And read. A Girl's a Half-Formed Thing. I think it's going to be great. Anyway, that's what I'm reading next.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.